Oh wow, I was not expecting to get myself some extra amount of platinum points as soon as I boot up the game on my glorious Nintendo Switch 2, which is kind of surprising honestly, but I digress. Greetings ladies and gentlemen, it is I am the one and only, Mexi here once again, and I am back for the likes of the Mexi Toys videos. And ladies and gentlemen, welcome back for some more of Let's Play of Super Mario Party Jamboree, for not only for the Nintendo Switch 1, but in addition to that, as you can see on screen, we are now diving into the Nintendo Switch 2 version with some new content. But anyway, so yesterday we did somehow manage able to show off the boss rush mode, and indeed I managed able to play as Bowser on that particular mode, just to make things a little bit more interesting about the fact that Bowser will indeed decide able to defeat Imposter Bowser in boss rush mode, which is pretty interesting all things considered. So today, for this video, and if you couldn't tell from the name of the video, is that we are about to be checking out one of those newer modes, or specifically, new rules to check out that's only existent on the Switch 2 version. Now before we dive into this though, however, as you can see on screen, once you're able to actually boot up the Super Mario Party Jamboree Nintendo Switch 2 edition plus Jamboree TV, you do realize about the fact that it's still managed able to show us the fact that Yato still requires a wrist strap accessory in order able to experience, well, pretty much everything else throughout the whole game, likely for motion control minigames and all that stuff. But in addition to that, as you can see on screen, similar to the forms of how it does it. Now remember back in our Let's Plays of not only Super Mario 3D World plus Bowser's Fury for Nintendo Switch, but in addition to Sonic X Shadow Generations, you do realize about the fact that once you boot the game up for the first time, we ended up in a familiar menu selection screen right there, which it does have its own separate things, which as you can see on screen, we actually stumbled across it ourselves not one, not two, but three different pipes. So as you can tell, we did somehow manage able to check out the game share, which is self-explanatory. It's basically just wireless play and stuff like that. But here's the catch though, you can only experience one board in particular, which appears to be Mecha Wiggler's Tree Party, which, yeah, you're not going to be missing out that much. But the main treatment of this version of the game on Nintendo Switch 2 is that, as you can see, in addition to having ourselves the base version of Super Mario Party Jamboree based off from the Switch 1 version from the green pipe, the gold pipe in the middle actually includes Jamboree TV, which as you can see, not only does it include new rules, but in addition to mouse, stands for mouse mini games, but in addition to that, camera play, and some other interesting stuff here and there. Oh, in addition to microphone as well. So with that being said, we'll go ahead and jump right into Jamboree TV. So as soon as you're able to realize about the fact that much like the forms of, well, let's just say Mario Party Superstars for instance, that you can either decide able to choose local play or just try to play for the actual thing in online play. Or, for that matter though, you're able to actually just, well, it's hard for me to explain personally, because even then though, I have touched upon this version for a little bit, since and around when the actual, the thing first came out. So, but of course the setup remains the same as the forms of the base game version of Super Mario Party Jamboree, that you can able to actually set up how many players you want to participating for, like 1 player, 2 players, 3 players, or 4 players. However, the biggest difference is this time, it does manage to take place in a different environment, or a different setup. Because, well, I don't know about you, but I'm pretty sure for the fact that we're going to be able to actually appear, for the sake of the forms of, it does remind me like a similar vibes almost, as in one of those quiz TV shows, for the sake of the forms if you ever watch them on TV, you know, think of like, Wheel of Fortune, or, just any other quiz shows for that matter. It kind of reminds me of that, except the fact that we're about to check out not only 1, but 4 modes to check out. Well, 2 of them are very familiar to you if you ever played the Switch 1 version of Super Mario Party Jamboree, but there are some slight differences, which I'll discuss more about that in a later time. And then 2 of the other modes are entirely brand new specifically for Nintendo Switch 2. Not only for the sake of the forms of the mouse control support, but in addition to that though, as far as I can recall, it does have camera play too, along with the microphone itself too. And in fact, believe it or not though, this is actually the very first capture footage I actually did manage to capture footage from on my Nintendo Switch 2. Which, conveniently enough though, despite the actual quality is nowhere near as high as anyone else is hoping for, because relatively speaking though, I did manage to test this out on my spare room time, and believe it or not, it actually worked. Especially noticeable, it's still on 1080p, well, despite the fact that I know for a fact that a lot of people out there was expecting for 4K resolution, but unfortunately though, I still cannot afford that just yet. Well, maybe I will do if my capture card decides able to go and die itself in the near future, but not now though. So anyway, so of course, much like the forms of how it does on the Switch 1 version of Super Mario Party Jamboree, you can able to actually play one of your playable characters, as you can see. So if you couldn't tell already about the fact that yes, I've already did manage to play as Bowser last time, specifically in Boss Rush mode, like I said earlier. So for the character choice this time around though, as you can see, I'm going to be playing as Daisy, because why the heck not? Especially about the fact that previously I've already played as not only Pauline, but in addition to Rosalina as well. Although I was expecting to try to play as Princess Peach, but that can wait for another time. So for now, I don't mind playing as Daisy for checking out one of those new rules to check out on specifically Mario Party mode. So because of that, after when you did somehow manage able to choose a character of your choice, then we can able to actually dive into the main menu in Jamboree TV. So as you can definitely tell, there are 4 modes to check out. There's Mario Party mode, and there's also free play mode, which for whatever reason is actually constructed as treasure chest for some reason. In addition to that, we also got 2 other new modes that are only exclusive for Nintendo Switch 2, both of which are Carnival Coaster and Bowser Live. So as far as I'm aware, we'll go for these modes in a chronological order. While I was expecting to try to go for left and right, but for now, let's go and get started with the forms of the Mario Party mode. So, now, unlike the forms of how it does it in the Switch 1 version of Super Mario Party Jamboree, that the actual hub world does manage to take place in Party Plaza, and no matter what though, is about the fact that once you hop onto the hot air balloon, you can able to actually check out all the other modes to check out, like, you know, Mario Party mode, Minigame Bay, in addition to Koopa Avalon, and Bowser Kaboom Squad, even Paratrooper Flight School, and especially noticeable with like Rhythm Kitchen, Toad's Item Factory, and etc, etc. Well, that's not the case on the Switch 2 version for specifically Jamboree TV, because aside from the fact that we can only able to actually experience some of these other mini games that are, well, we'll talk more about that in likely on next week or something like that. So for now, let's go ahead and dive straight into the forms of Mario Party modes to check out first, because there's not 1 but 2 rules that we can able to actually only experience in Jamboree TV mode. And a quick honorable mention is about the fact that if you couldn't tell already, the load times are much more faster now compared to the forms of how it does it, how slow it was sometimes on Switch 1. So yeah, as you can see, we are no longer trying to check out any other islands in this particular portion of it though. So we're only going to be targeting on Mario Party mode. So because of that, you can still able to actually experience 7 playable boards in this particular, you know, version of this particular aspect. But the major difference is this time, not only do we still able to get ourselves party roles, but in addition to that, we also got ourselves 2 other roles that are only exclusive on Jamboree TV, which are Frenzy roles and Tag Team roles. So for the most part though, I was expecting to try to show off Frenzy roles first, but as you can definitely tell from the title of this video, we're about to check out Tag Team roles first. So because of that, you know, think of like the forms of the similar mode, as in not only let's just say Mario Party 4 technically, and in addition to Mario Party 5, Mario Party 6, Mario Party 7, Mario Party 8, and Mario Party DS. That, to put it simply though, is basically a 2 versus 2 play match in Mario Party mode. So because of that though, yeah, this is the mode we're about to check out first. So, and as soon as you're able to dive into this, there are some rules that we can able to explain to you all for something. And this is obviously a, you know, 2 versus 2 tag team battle. So as a result, though, the goal remains the same as before. Like, you need to be able to collect coins and stars together. And yeah, the team with the most stars at the end wins. However, though, you can also able to share items together. Now, here's the thing, though. Similar to the forms of how it does it on, let's just say, well, it's hard for me to explain, but I do know for certain for one thing is that unlike Mario Party 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, and DS especially, you can only still carry up to 3 items instead of 5 or 6 in Mario Party 4. But ultimately, though, is about the fact that we can still able to try to use items together in a team. And there's also a new space to check out, and that's what appears to be the rally space. Which, if you land on that, you're able to actually call out your teammates, not only to able to sometimes increase your speed, well, usually for the sake of defaults, the distance of movements off the board, but in addition to that, though, is about the fact you can also get additional coins if one of your teammates actually lands on the same space as each other, which, again, we'll talk more about that once we dive into this. And there's also a brand new item that is only exclusive onto Tag Team Rules. And that's what appears to be a Together dice, where basically it functions the same way as double dice sets in the regular Mario Party mode, but the biggest difference is this time is that if you do manage to be able to use it, not only it only appears on the second half of the game, but it's also about the fact that it actually costs about 20 coins, which is quite much. But even then, before we get into more details about this, here's the actual results of the actual poll results for the actual board choice in the forms of tag match rules. So as a result, though, the winner for this category is Mario's Rainbow Castle, strangely, because I was assuming for the fact that we can able to expect to try out Mega Wiggler's Tree Party, but it turns out it's all thanks to the forms of several of those fans out there was begging for Mario's Rainbow Castle the most, which is ironic considering about the fact that this might actually be the only retro board choice we can able to actually revisit it on. So yeah, that's actually pretty interesting. So and in terms of character choice we'll also pick, we'll obviously attempt to play for not only Peach, but also with Bowser and Bowser Jr., despite the fact that we've already seen them two since in a previous video in Boss Rush mode. But ultimately, though, the reason why I go for that combination is because of the team aspect. So obviously, though, we'll still set the actual message speed on fast mode, and on top of that, computer players are obviously on hard mode, so either way. Now, of course, much like the forms within not only Mario Party 4, but also 5, 6, 7, and 8, and DS especially, you can able to actually change what teammates you want to go for. And on top of all that stuff, though, as you can see on screen, we now have the addition of not only motion controls, much like the Switch 1 version, but addition to mouse controls as well. And it's also worth noting for is that about the fact that when it comes to the forms of tag team roles, there aren't any Jamboree buddies to be found. So because of that, though, making the entire process when it comes to going for this entire rule set a lot quicker in comparison to the forms of how it does it on not only regular party roles, but in addition to pro roles as well. Although it still attempts to be a little bit lengthy sometimes, especially noticeable with all that animations actually plays out to be. But either way, we shall wait and see what happens. So either way, yeah, let's jump straight into the forms of the tag team roles of Super Mario Party Jamboree Switch 2 Edition, basically. So, obviously the roles all remains the same as before, but only now, in the actual decide turn order, we're actually going to be doing a combination with the forms of those numbers together. Although, ultimately, though, we are going to be on second, so yeah, it looks like that Team Red is going to be in first. So, in fact, kind of think about it, this mode plays kind of similar to the forms of how it does it on Partner Party mode in Super Mario Party, but there are some noticeable differences, like for instance though, that we are no longer having ourselves the dice block from 1 through 6, so instead now we are actually having a dice block through 1 through 10. So yeah, that's actually pretty cool and awesome at the same time, and in addition to that, we are no longer on grid based, so it's all likely for the sake of the forms of individual space movements, just like the forms of how it does in the good old Mario Party days. So yeah, with that being said, let's go ahead and dive straight into the forms of the Tag Team Rules mode in Super Mario Party Jamboree Switch 2 Edition, like I said earlier. So But of course, there's no point for able to actually mention about the forms of Mario's Rainbow Castle again, because sure enough though, we've already experienced this board before, since on the Switch 1 version. So because of that, and also keep that in mind though, is that in addition about the fact that the load times are much more faster this time around, the game now supports, let's just say 1440p, to be more specifically, in Jamboree TV Mode, which, the only thing that it gives a lot of players some bit of criticism with this version of the game is that this particular add-on, or specifically the upgrade pack, it doesn't add that a whole lot. I mean, we were expecting to able to actually have more additional boards or more playable characters, but ultimately though is about the fact that we only get a chance to experience not only 2 new roles on Mario Party mode, but in addition to 2 other separate modes that it does have Nintendo Switch 2's huge capabilities, like, you know, with mouse controls, and in addition to camera play and microphone controls as well. And speaking of which, here's the first of the mouse minigames to check out, and that's what it appears to be, Bowser Filter. So, sort emails into the correct folders, emails from Bowser go to the trash. So, yeah, you quite literally control with the Joy-Con 2 controller as a mouse. So, you know, think of like you trying to able to browse for something on the internet. However, the biggest difference is this time is basically a minigame out of it. So, and you can also try to sort out with the forms of not only the normal emails, but in addition to the emails that does have heart symbols, which obviously though you do need to sort out with its individual folders right there. So, yeah, let's get this thing to it, shall we? Oh yeah, and something's worth noting for is about the fact that yes, today's date, of course, there is the 10th of September today, in some cases in 2025 today, and I can't even believe by saying this, it's about the fact that while looking back, specifically in 2010, if I can recall, that will mark the 15th anniversary of the game's release of Kingdom Hearts Birth by Sleep on the PlayStation Portable, specifically the UK version, which, yeah, while looking back on it though, I found it was a little bit hard to go back onto the original version of Birth by Sleep to me, plus it's mainly because every nowadays though, we actually got ourselves the actual proper 2 analog stick controls for not only for PlayStation 3, but in addition to the PlayStation 4 version for the sake of the Final Mix version. So, as a matter of fact, though, it's about the fact that when it comes to the original PSP version, I was so close towards the end of this particular story progression in Birth by Sleep, but as a result, though, the only thing I was basically stuck on is the final episodes, which I know for a fact that every now and then is about the fact that when it comes to some bosses, attempts to heal themselves eventually, which is a little bit unfair in some scenarios, but yeah, you can get the idea what I was expecting to try to mention about this particular whole scenario is like that. So, and also I do remember back then that the load times on the original PSP version of Birth by Sleep is pretty horrendous, unless if you're trying to able to download the actual installing data, which it does manage to reduce loading times, and in addition to reducing you know, buffering times every time whenever you manage to able to try to sort out with the command decks or anything else like that. So, yeah, it's hard for me to explain about that particular subject personally, because it has been about a full year ago since I actually have last touched upon something related to Kingdom Hearts since Kingdom Hearts 2 Final Mix on the PlayStation 4, just so able to actually have some fun, able to actually look back on the amazing game of all time, which is of course Kingdom Hearts 2, but on PlayStation 4. I know for a fact that there are some other versions out there, like, you know, with Xbox One, and as well as Xbox Series X/S, and even nowadays with Nintendo Switch, despite the fact that it's usually going to be on cloud version from now on, which it still really boggles my mind about the fact that there's no native version of the Kingdom Hearts games onto Nintendo Switch 2, which I know for a fact that because of the forms of space capacity, but it's also about the fact that while the cloud versions might be overly redundant, especially it doesn't help about the fact that the pricing is so pricey when it comes to likely if you're trying to get every single games into one specific package, including Kingdom Hearts 3, so no matter what though, it's about the fact that you are still not missing that much in terms of the actual Switch 1 version of the majority of the Kingdom Hearts games, basically, because of that stupid cloud version format. So, But I digress. So, and it's also around that time actually, it's about the fact that we've only just got about, well let's just say, that we've only got about 15 more days to go until Sonic Racing Cross Worlds is going to be closer to its release. And then meanwhile, when it comes to Pac-Man World 2 Repack, I'm pretty sure we've only got about 16 more days to go until that particular game is going to be releasing on not only for PlayStation 4, but in addition to the Xbox One version and Xbox Series X/S, PlayStation 5, Nintendo Switch, PC Steam, and finally, of course, the Nintendo Switch 2. Now, if you guys are probably thinking to yourself about the fact that when exactly are you going to be doing your Let's Play in terms of Pac-Man World 2 Repack, well, it's a bit of a tough choice for me personally, because I would suggest able to actually try to go through not only the Switch 1 version, or the Switch 2 version, because like I said before, since in yesterday, I did indeed manage to able to pre-order the digital version of Pac-Man World 2 Repack on Switch 2, so that way not only do I able to actually experience the game within a good resolution bump, but it's also about the fact that I can able to actually access the digital deluxe edition straight off the bat. Well, for the most part anyway, when it comes to the Switch 2 version and the PS4 version from now on. Because I'm not entirely sure if they're able to actually bring the separate purchasable DLC for not only for Switch 1, but in addition to the Xbox systems as of now. So because of that though, we shall wait and see what happens, probably by the end of the month. So for now on though, let's not get ahead of ourselves at this point right now. So anywho though, and it's also around that point for the fact that we've only just got about exactly 3 more days to go now until the, well, Super Mario Bros. 40th anniversary will hopefully attempt to make it happen, especially because, well, you're about to be mostly excited for, in terms of specifically for this upcoming weekend. So, but either way, this is only a matter of time though, especially noticeable considering for the fact that, well, again, I was originally trying to able to mention about something related to the forms of iPhone projects during that time, specifically with the forms of the most recent Apple events has already been happened since and around yesterday and stuff like that. But again though, it's probably best if I will mention more about it until specifically by the time until tomorrow comes. So because of that though, because for the most part though, it's about the fact that when it comes to the forms of tag team roles, it plays pretty similar to the forms of how it does it on party roles and pro roles respectively, but only now it's in team based. And in addition to that, well, like I said before, there are no Jamboree buddies to be found, so this means no showdown mini games to be found. So unless if we're able to actually dive into frenzy rolls at some point, we might still able to actually come across it ourselves into the Jamboree Showdown minigames at one point. Well, only one of them per se, just because no matter what though, we should probably save that particular topic until specifically by next week, so just to ensure for the fact that we can able to actually just try to able to compare the forms of multitude of roles to check out when it comes to Mario Party mode. Although, the strangest part about the forms of Jamboree TV Mode, to me though, is about the fact that apparently though, Pro Roles was not included on Jamboree TV portion of the game, which I felt was a little bit odd, considering about the fact that most players complain about the fact that there aren't any additional new content, aside from the fact that, well, like I said before, no new playable boards or no new playable characters to be found. So as a result though, we are basically stuck around with not only 2 new role sets in Mario Party mode, but in addition to that though, there's actually 20 additional mini-games which was not found on the Switch 1 version. So, which I'll talk more about that in a second, because we're going back into Granite Getaway. So, anyway, and on top of that, we could also able to check out 2 other modes that, like I said before, it does have Nintendo Switch 2's huge capabilities, like mouse controls in, specifically, Carnival Coaster mode, and in addition to microphone is going to be built in with the Switch 2 itself, and of course, most notably, Nintendo Switch 2 camera, which I know for a fact that, like I said earlier, we're able to actually come across it ourselves 20 additional mini-games on Jamboree TV mode, and as a result, in addition to able to having ourselves, you know, 112 mini-games already, on the phones within the Switch 1 version of Super Mario Party Jamboree, plus with 20 additional minigames on Jamboree TV, making a grand total of whopping 132 minigames throughout the entire package. And that, ladies and gentlemen, is the largest amount of minigames you can able to experience in a Mario Party game, which is pretty impressive for sure. Although, despite the fact that it does have some shortcomings, like I said this before, because no matter what though is about the fact that there are certain mini-games, specifically in free-play mode, in Jamboree TV Mode, you do realize about the fact that there are certain mini-games was absent on that particular Jamboree TV portion of this package. Like, for example though, there aren't any survival mini-games to be found, and in addition to coin mini-games based off from Cooper Avalon mode, and in addition to river mini-games as well. And I suppose that's about it, basically, as far as I can recall that correctly. I mean, generally speaking, I was about the fact that, like I said before, I briefly touched upon this particular expansion for a little amount of time, but that's mainly because at that point in time, I'm still busy playing through not only Mario Kart World, but in addition to Donkey Kong Bonanza. But it wasn't until specifically after we've shown off everything in terms of Super Mario Party Jamboree, we can pretty much expect what's to come next afterwards when it comes to showing ourselves the Switch 2 content, which, again, that'll be a topic for a later time. So because of that though, yeah, let's just see what happens for Bowser Jr. either way. And he obviously gets a 9, so yeah, during this whole entire process, without any some sort of showdown minigames will be triggering, makes things a lot more quicker to dive into. I mean, there are still a couple of times though about the fact that, like I said before, there are certain animations will play out, making certain aspects attempts to drag on. But regardless of such though, is about the fact that, as you can see on screen, Peach managed to land on the rally space, and believe it or not, I somehow transported there. So because of that though, that way, not only do I get myself some more movement, but in addition to the forms of, well, getting some bonus coins to top of that. So, anyways, here's the new minigame to check out, which appears to be What's the Scoop? I'm guessing it's going to be involved around ice cream. So, prepare ice cream cones to order. The team that completes the most orders wins. Dividing the work effortlessly is the key. So, yeah, basically though it's about the fact you have to do some bit of motions involved with the mouse controls and everything, and as a result though it's about the fact that that way you can able to do all sorts of actions, such as, you know, scooping up the ice cream's flavors, and in addition to that though you can also able to actually try to press not only the L and R buttons, but in addition to the ZL and ZR buttons respectively. You know, think of like if you're trying to able to physically try to use the actual proper mouse for your computer. So yeah, it's kind of interesting to say the least, which I know for a fact that there are some other Nintendo Switch 2 games that does also utilize this mouse controls as well, such as for instance though with Donkey Kong Bonanza, where it comes to DK Artist mode, that you can able to actually craft your very own 3D shapes, and also, there's a lot of emphasis on customization when it comes to the forms of DK Artist, and on top of that, there's also two-player co-op mode in Donkey Kong Bonanza that one player controls Donkey Kong, and then the other player can able to technically take control of Pauline, despite the fact that she doesn't move individually, unlike the forms of how it does it for Donkey Kong. So instead, that she able to actually calls out those specific bunch of letters to signify it as projectiles, and also at the same time though, trying to able to actually dish out as many enemies as you could while trying to able to aim with the mouse cursor, which is pretty interesting. So, and another one of those examples being the forms of Nintendo Switch 2 Welcome Tour, which pretty much demonstrates the forms of how the Nintendo Switch 2 actually is fully capable of. So, but yeah, in fact, let me know in the comments down below for the question of the day. What was your first impressions about the forms of Super Mario Party Jamboree, Nintendo Switch 2 Edition, plus Jamboree TV so far? I mean, despite the fact that this particular expansion has already been out for about almost 2 months ago, since July 24th in 2025. And you know what's even weird is about the fact that this particular upgrade pack, specifically Jamboree TV, did somehow manage to came out in about, let's just say, 9 months after the Switch 1 version of Super Mario Party Jamboree did somehow first came out. So, kind of weird for that respect, especially because, well, usually back in the day, they always attempt able to release any other Mario Party games within a year apart. Well, some exceptions, mind you, which is, of course, not only Mario Party 9, but also Mario Party 10, Super Mario Party, Mario Party Superstars, and now Super Mario Party Jamboree is like a 3 years apart from each other when it comes to the forms of the actual games releases, specifically console releases, as far as this is worth considering about, whilst unlike the forms of how it does on the 3DS days, with not only with Island Tour, but in addition to Star Rush, the Top 100, they've gone all over the place when it comes to year releases during that specific gap time frame. So, like, for example, though, in between the forms of, let's just say, in Mario Party Advance that somehow first came out in 2005, and then around 2 years later, we've got, you know, Mario Party DS, but it wasn't until 6 years later, in 2013, or 7 if you want to count the UK version, as well as the Australian version, and the Japanese version, that when it comes to Mario Party Island Tour, that somehow first came out in between both, let's just say, 2013 and 2014 respectively. But then until 2 years later, we got Star Rush, and then 1 year later, we've got, you know, Mario Party the Top 100. So, I think that's as far as I can try to explain about that. So, here we go on to the next new minigame, which appears to be Toad Ally Electric Escape. Oh, this is interesting. Get all the Toads to the goal. If you hit a wall or obstacle, you have to start over. Once you go through a checkpoint, you can restart from there. Okay, that's interesting to say the least. Although, kind of thinking about it though, this particular minigame reminds me of a similar concept as in one of those Nintendo Land attractions, which appears to be Donkey Kong Crash Course. That, if you remember, that particular attraction involves around the forms of the Wii U gamepad, and no matter what though, you have to tilt the actual gamepad in a corresponding direction to take control of your Mii character. And as a matter of fact though, it does remind me like a similar vibes as in this, except now we have to use mouse controls in order to actually experience the whole thing. So, now, aside from all that stuff though, there are two different types of the forms of those specific roles. In terms of the forms of the mouse control minigames, as far as I'm aware, there's the forms of the battle type, which obviously stands for 2 versus 2, and there's also with the forms of teamwork version, which is only existence until specifically once we dive into Carnival Coaster mode, and you're more able to find out and see what happens during at some point until next week. So for the most part though, we did somehow win so far, which is obviously pretty top-notch, especially for the fact that no matter what though, is about the fact that we can still able to actually get ourselves some coins and what have you. So yeah, I've got nothing else to say about this, I guess. So yeah, if you couldn't tell already, for the fact that I promise you guys this will be the final time to try to able to set up the actual 30-turn game, which means about the fact that this is also going to be the final time we can able to come across into ourselves not only 1, not only 2, but 3 bonus stars in a row. So meaning about the fact that, you know, this is the last time we can able to actually play Mario Party mode in a 30-turn game. So no matter what though, once we dive into Frenzy Rolls mode, it'll be a lot more quicker, especially because no matter what though, again, that'll be a discussion during at some point until next week, if depending on the forms of what's going on throughout the majority of this week. So because of that though, yeah, everything else checks out there basically. So let's go ahead and use the creepy dice block right at Bowser. So no matter what though, you can either decide able to use it for yourself, or you can able to use it for your teammates, or to be more specifically, trying to able to, well, thrash the computer player, like for instance with Bowser, although the actual item effect still remains the same as the regular Party Rolls mode, and alongside the forms of Party Rolls as well. However, here's the thing though, is about the fact that the actual host in not only Party Rolls, but in addition to Tag Team Rolls and Frenzy Rolls, are all hosted by Yellow Toad, whilst unlike Pro Rolls mode is only being hosted by Purple Toad, which I was assuming for the fact that they're trying to able to actually bring different host variety when it comes to the forms of not only, you know, frenzy roles, but in addition to tag team roles as well. Likely, for example though, I can imagine about the fact that Green Toad will be the host of tag team roles, but unfortunately though that's not the case. And same applies with the forms of frenzy roles as well, that I'm almost assuming for the fact that we can able to expect that Blue Toad will be the host, but nope, it's still basically Yellow Toad, just like the forms of how it does it on regular party roles mode. So, and as you can see, we actually come across into a chance time space in this particular rules. And as you can see, rather than just trying to work with the forms of 3 slots this time, so instead we have to rely on 2 slots this time. And it still basically just becomes a lot more punishing that if you do realize about the fact that there's going to be a trade coins or trade star slot. Oh boy, you might see nothing yet. So with that being said though, back to the bonus minigame as it stands, and we are once again going back into Big Top Quiz again. Seriously, there's gonna be a lot of repeats this often, especially because, you know, after all, we've already experienced most of these minigames on Switch 1 version, mind you, but still, there's gonna be a lot of repeats, you know? And then again though, I do apologize about the forms of my commentary gets a bit stilted at times, because even then though, I just seriously cannot wait to see what's going to be up next throughout the majority of this week. But I do know for certain for one thing, that since in yesterday, that Bubsy in the Perfect Collection compilation game has already came out yesterday, for not only for PlayStation 5, but in addition to Nintendo Switch, as well as Xbox Series X/S. So, yeah, I don't know if I can able to try that compilation out, although I'm sure enough though, I've heard so many bad things about it, like added in some, you know, 2 bad games, or actually gonna think about it, the majority of the games in general, when it comes to Bubsy games alike, they're incredibly bad, with all that, you know, picky hit detection, and on top of all that stuff though, Bubsy dies really easily. And not only that though, what I've noticed on the 3rd game, which is only on Atari Jaguar, basically though, that game has expansive levels, and not only that though, the levels goes by way too long, especially because, well, we have no idea where the heck the end of the stage was. So, yeah, no matter what though, I don't know if I'm going to be missing that much though, although it might be an interesting novelty. Well, despite the fact that it's definitely possible you can now able to play Bubsy 3D on the go now, specifically on Nintendo Switch version, but still, I can't deny about the forms of how the fact that Bubsy is not the only mascot I was not interested with it, especially because of all that. Well, I've heard about him, don't get me wrong, but it's just that trying his games in particular, it's not my kind of thing. I much rather prefer playing, you know, not only a bunch of Mario things, but in addition to a bunch of Sonic stuff here and as well, just because, you know, I'm biased, I guess, and even nowadays with the, well, the Pac-Man World games, especially because, you know, Pac-Man World 2 repack is on its way, and straight to the point though is about the fact that, oh, are you kidding me, Bowser just got himself the hidden block, and it's all coins, so at least I'm gonna be alright with that. Now, here's what I found a little bit odd about this particular package in terms of the forms of Jamboree TV as it stands. Well, normally though, on the Switch 1 version, they're expecting to be able to actually show you guys the online ranking results. That apparently though, the Jamboree TV portion of this entire package, that the online functionalities when it comes to rankings and all that stuff, has mysteriously absent, which I'm not exactly sure why that is though. Well, at the very least though, you can still able to experience the whole entire package online. So no matter what though, here's the catch though, it's about the fact that when it comes to online play, it's only accessible in Mario Party mode. So there's no additional modes to check out in online play, like, you know, no online play for Bowser Live. And in addition to Carnival Coaster as well. So it does have some little limitations in regards to the forms of the comparison with the Switch 1 version. So, yeah, it seems a little bit odd, per se. So I'm pretty sure for the fact that with the Bowser space, it's basically unchanged compared to the forms of how it does on Pro Rolls mode, because in Pro Rolls mode, it'll be very punishing. So because of that though, it plays pretty much exactly like in regular Party Rolls mode, so nothing new or anything else like that, so... But either way, so I'm sure enough though is about the fact that again, much like the forms of how it does on the Switch 1 version, I will try my best to able to actually encounter every single minigames in terms of the forms of Jamboree TV Mode, and in the entire package, likely also for the fact that so far we've only experienced 3 new minigames that's only existence on the Jamboree TV Mode, so I'm pretty sure enough that was about the fact that technically speaking though, in regards to the forms of mouse-controlled minigames, there's only like a grand total of 14 of these minigames, and then meanwhile when it comes to the other 6, there are all on Bowser Live, which appears to be 3 of them for utilizing the Nintendo Switch 2 camera, and then the other 3 that utilizes microphone, which, kind of thinking about it though, it's been a very long time in the Mario Party game that we actually got ourselves microphone-controlled minigames, since technically Mario Party the Top 100, because, you know, there are some minigames did return from the Top 100 that does utilizes microphone controls, specifically for the majority of, let's just say Mario Party 7 minigames, I'm pretty sure. Because, well, unlike Mario Party 6 though, it does have some limitations when it comes to the microphone peripheral. Well, regardless of such though, is about the fact that we can pretty much expect how the actual similarities actually has to come over. So, okay, come on. Oh yeah! And in fact, to make matters even better, I'm now going to be using the Joy-Con 2 controller, because, you know, with mouse controls, it's only been playable if you're able to actually have Joy-Con 2 controllers. So, and my goodness, while holding the Joy-Con 2 on hand, it just feels a lot more comfortable to use compared to the forms of how it does it for the regular Joy-Con controllers from Switch 1. And because of that though, I honestly do prefer Joy-Con 2 controllers over the likes of the Switch 1 Joy-Con controllers, because generally speaking, not only does the analog sticks look a bit bigger, in addition to that though, is about the fact I do realize that the comfortable factor is actually a lot more comfortable if you do manage to able to hold the Joy-Con 2 controllers horizontally, which is pretty impressive for the time, especially because although the only downside to this though, much like the regular Joy-Cons for Switch 1, it might still occur the Joy-Con drifting, which is a bit of a nuisance, especially because, to make matters even much more worse than that, is that the economy is about to get messed up these days, especially because it's now gonna get twice as expensive compared to the regular Joy-Con controllers, which is mind-boggling to me. So, anyways, at the very least, I somehow made my way to the first star in this particular rules, so does take a bit while to able to actually get to this point, but regardless of such though, we somehow made it. So, but of course, in order to actually get the ability to buy 2 stars in particular, you have to bring your partner over when it comes to that special item, which is of course the Together Dice. But here's the catch though, the Together Dice item is not going to appear until the halfway point of this particular game. So because of that though, like take this part for example, that you do realize about the fact that there aren't any Together Dice to be found, so instead we're able to come across into ourselves not only Plunger Chest, but in addition to the Dueling Glove and the Warp Box, and especially noticeable with the half coin Steel Traps and all that stuff, alongside with the forms of the creepy dice block as well. So those are the only items available up to this point, so... And oh boy, again, if we dive onto the Frenzy Rolls mode, oh man, it will be a lot more interesting, especially because of all that. Well, not only because of how quick it can be, but as well as that though, is about the fact that you might be able to come across into the best item shop, or the best items in the item shop, straight off the bat, which even then though, again, that'll be a topic specifically until next week. So, it's also around that point, is about the fact that, well, conveniently enough though, this might actually be, without a doubt, the longest Mario Party Let's Play I've ever done so far, which is especially noticeable considering for the fact that we've almost pretty much done with every aspect when it comes to the Switch 1 content, but now we're diving into the Switch 2 content, so that means about the fact that this particular Let's Play is going to be quite long, just like the forms of how it does it on any other Let's Plays in the past, such as for instance, Paper Mario, and in addition to Super Mario 3D All-Stars, Sonic Frontiers, and of course, Super Mario Odyssey. So no matter what though, yeah, we'll talk more about that later, because here we have another new minigame, Stuffy Stacker. Oh, this sounds pretty interesting, especially if we're about to able to utilize trying to put these plushies in a specific position. So, pile up plushies, the tallest tower standing wins. Pay close attention to plushie shapes and change their optimization when needed. So, yeah, this minigame is actually pretty tricky, I'm not gonna lie. In fact, this minigame does remind me of one of those minigames in Mario Party 10, which appears to be Shape Up. Although, however, unlike in Mario Party 10 and Shape Up, it's actually very simple and self-explanatory. It is also ridiculously easy to win, depending on how well your teammate actually behaves itself. I feel like this minigame is actually really difficult for a multitude of factors. For one, realism physics sometimes, and on top of all that stuff, my AI partner companion does do little jobs. I mean, not all the time though. And thirdly, if you couldn't tell from the actual instructions for about a few seconds ago, yes, much like the forms of how it does it on some of these gyroscope minigames from the likes of Mario Party Island Tour, for example, there's actually a reset gyro option, which if you try to push that specific dedicated button, that means your gyro will be reset into its original position. So, in case if you want to get yourself some good accuracy when it comes to not only with gyro sensing controls, but in addition to mouse controls like right here. Although unfortunately though we somehow lost because of that last 3 seconds moments, just like the forms of Shape Up in Mario Party 10. However though, it now appears right after finished text was actually appeared. Whilst unlike Mario Party 10 and Shape Up, that the time limit does attempt to show up, or the 3 seconds countdown usually appears just before finish text appears. So I have no idea why someone made that comparison, but still. It just reminds me of that minigame in Mario Party 10, but either way. Which, still, kind of think about it, it still looks pretty crazy to look back in 10 years ago that Mario Party 10 did somehow first came out in only on the Wii U, and still, around that time, that was the only one Mario Party game, like a brand new installment at the time, that came out on the Wii U without any some sort of other sequels. So because of that, no wonder why the Wii U did somehow flop at the end. So, but either way, Bowser meets up with himself again, but usually you get the idea that he still got his guitar, so either way. Now, if you're probably wondering about the fact that if you do manage to able to insert the Nintendo Switch 2 camera, you can able to actually use that in multitude of modes. Likely, for instance, though, in Jamboree TV, most likely, that you can able to use that in Mario Party mode, and you can also use that in free play mode, and in addition to Carnival Coaster, and the majority of the time in Bowser Live. So because of that, though, I was originally trying to hook up that thing during the forms within this mode, but I might not do that, because obviously, though, I might also save it up as soon as we're able to actually dive into, well, the Bowser Live or Carnival Coaster, if depending on my taste. So, in fact, let me know in the comments down below, do you guys want me to able to utilize the Nintendo Switch 2 camera for specifically not only Carnival Coaster, but in addition to Bowser Live? Well, usually Bowser Live is most likely, but let me know in the comments down below if you want me to use that accessory on Carnival Coaster, because that will be quite interesting, because it does remind me like a similar vibes as in Seiko Superstars for the PlayStation 2, alongside with the forms of any other PlayStation 2 games that does utilize this iToy camera accessory, which, either way though, that will be quite an interesting to check out, so anyway, so we're going back into 4-player minigames. Now, similar to the forms of how it does it in Mario Party 5, and in addition to Mario Party 6, and I believe Mario Party 7, 8, and DS especially, there's only like 2 categories of minigames you can only play in tag team rules, which appears to be 2 versus 2, and 4-player minigames. So no matter what though, yeah, it just behaves pretty much exactly like the forms of how it does it since, you know, Mario Party 5, 6, 7, 8, and DS, but not 4, because in Mario Party 4 you will come across into multitude of minigame types, ranging from 4-player minigames, 1 versus 3 minigames, 2 versus 2 minigames, and occasional battle minigames you know as well, so yeah, you get the idea what I'm talking about, especially that we've already done all the other Mario Party games basically, except Mario Party E, because you know, I still don't have that, and not only that though, that game still only exists in America as far as I'm aware of, so Alright, so Bowser gets an 8, so yeah, it looks like it's now going back into this nice, bright, colorful vibes with all that sunlight and everything, and on top of that, nice, beautiful rendition of the music with Mario's Rainbow Castle. In fact, I really do wish that any other Mario Party games will be added onto the Nintendo Music application, alongside with the forms of any other, like, Mario games in particular, like, you know, Super Mario Sunshine, Super Mario Galaxy 2 especially, and even especially noticeable with the forms of, I would say, let's say Super Mario 3D Land, and as well as Super Mario 3D World, perhaps? I mean, time will definitely tell though, especially because at that point in time, we're still on the middle of the week, on, you know, the second week in terms of the forms of September, so, anyway, it was also around that time actually, it's about the fact that until next month, that there's going to be a 15th anniversary of a certain show, which is of course My Little Pony Friendship is Magic, which, geez, until next month, it will be 15 years since that particular show was first premiered in Hop Network TV back in 2010 on the 10th of October, which is pretty crazy though, but either way. So, and also, another thing I want to point out as well is about the fact that, speaking of which though, I was expecting to originally try to able to get myself my Australian DVD copies of, you know, the majority of those specific individual discs for the likes of My Little Pony Friendship is Magic, specifically Season 8, but I feel like for the fact that, unfortunately, as for right now, that I'm still basically trying to able to actually saving up my space storage for my DVD shelvings, especially because, you know, the next Mario movie is going to be on its way, in addition to Sonic the Hedgehog 4 as well, so I might able to actually try to able to rethink about it, especially because I feel like while looking back on Season 8, aside from some good episodes while looking back on Season 8, I feel like that to me though, Season 8 is my least favorite in terms of those seasons of My Little Pony Friendship is Magic. I mean, don't get me wrong, it is not a bad season, but it's just that I just feel like for the fact that the actual School of Friendship is interesting concept-wise while looking back, but it's just that at the end of the day though, I can totally see why a lot of bronies out there is not overly keen on Season 8 nowadays, especially because of all that questionable design choices, alongside with the forms of some episodes have been reused concept-wise from some previous seasons or something like that. I mean, truth be told though, it has been quite a while since I actually mentioned something related to My Little Pony Friendship is Magic, of course. Well, still, I can't really judge the actual specific different opinions on. Well, again, it's very tricky for me to judge. So, anywho. So, there's also another thing I want to classify for something as well, is that, usually relatively speaking though, recently in Sega, they may actually showcase another new stage has been added for Sonic Racing Cross Worlds. Yeah, it has been quite a while, hasn't it? So now they've somehow added in a stage based off from Sonic Lost World, which apparently though, they're able to actually going into Hidden World based off from the Wii U version / the PC version of Sonic Lost World. I guess that makes it pretty obvious, considering about the fact that the majority of the levels in Sonic Lost World is very uninspiring, especially because it's almost entirely based off from the new Super Mario Bros. World themes, like, you know, with Grasslands and Desert Worlds, Tropical Beach World, and Snowy Level, and you get the idea for this point. It's especially noticeable because, well, kind of thinking about it though, it's also been 10 years ago since the PC version of Sonic Lost World was first released. Mind you, I haven't exactly experienced that version for myself, but I do know for certain for one thing is about the fact I much rather prefer playing Sonic Lost World on the Wii U, just because of, well, not only because of the Wii U gamepad's comfortable factor to me, but as well as on that though, is about the fact it does have some interesting gimmicks when it comes to wisps alike, especially noticeable with the Wii U gamepad's controls. So, aside from all that stuff though, yeah, I guess there's nothing else I can say about this, I guess. I mean, sure, I would have liked able to explain more, but that's just it though. It's just about the fact that, well, I'm sure enough that was about the fact that, again, we'll talk more details about the forms of several of announcements they bring, thanks to Apple events recently, and among all others as well. So it may look like Bowser is going to be getting not one, but 3 items, which is interesting. So thanks to the forms that item back. So yeah, I got nothing else to say. So anyways, it's now my turn here.